Hello, my name's Vic Gilgis, and I'm back again. This time, giving you a talk on how to evaporate anxiety and depression. Now, I've previously explained about the three principles of mind, consciousness, and thought. If you want to know a lot about this, it's Sydney Banks' videos will tell you everything. Today I'm going to talk more about the thought aspect of things. Now, our thoughts give us our moment-to-moment take on life. In other words, the world is out there, but it's our take on the world through our thoughts. Our thoughts are what give us our experience of life, our moment-to-moment take on life. And everyone else has their own thought-created reality. So that is why when we have a shared experience, so you can have a number of people experiencing the same thing, like going to a party, for example, each of the people will have a different idea of that experience because they'll have different thoughts. So in other words, our reality is created through our thoughts, not through our situation or circumstances. They are our take on things. And that is a good thing, because sometimes when we see people getting up in their head, getting angry or annoyed or jealous, all the things that we do, because we can have all sorts of thoughts, then we also know that they are no different to us. So perhaps instead of getting angry with them, we can have a bit of understanding, because that's what we do. And if we look at how we concentrate on particular thoughts or go with a particular thought, then we can see that we can get stuck on a thought. So, and I've said this before, sometimes people go for psychoanalysis, counselling, when in effect it is because they are not understanding the process of thought, that we can get stuck on a particular thought, and as soon as the thought moves on, fresh thought comes in. And that is the advantage of knowing basically how the car works, that if we don't put petrol in the car, it won't go, or if we don't look at the thermometer, the temperature of the engine, it can blow up. And it's the same with our thoughts. If we don't understand that a cluttered mind focusing on particular thoughts can stop fresh thought happening, then it won't happen. And the fact that we all have the creative ability of thought is a wonderful thing, because thought in the moment gives us that creative possibilities. It opens up our creative potential, because life is basically putting a thought in front of us of what to do, or what is possible to be done. Now let me explain this process. We cannot stop thoughts coming to us. It is like a bubbling pot of soup, the bubbles coming up. They're like thoughts. We cannot stop those bubbles coming up. So we can have good thoughts, bad thoughts, and bad thoughts, I mean envy thoughts, jealousy thoughts, hatred thoughts, murderous thoughts. I was just thinking murderous thoughts, so long as they don't act on those thoughts. And that is perhaps the difference between people who get convicted for acting on particular thoughts, where other people don't act on those thoughts. They think about those thoughts. And therein lies the knowing that sometimes thoughts can appear so real, so solid, but they are not solid. And left alone, those thoughts will, like as solid as ice, will turn into liquid, and that liquid can evaporate. And that's why I've given today's talk the title, Evaporating Anxiety and Depression. Because if we focus on our anxiety and things that get us down, it will be as if that thought is fixed with us, that is never going to go away, it's so solid, they won't evaporate, but they do evaporate when we leave them alone. And that is our take on things. And I was watching a talk the other day given by some prison offenders, and one prison offender was saying how freer he felt, although being in a prison, he was not free in that sense, but he was free in the sense that he could exercise which thoughts to go with. And again, I've mentioned this before, that it goes back to Viktor Frankl, who was in concentration camp, Nazi concentration camp at Auschwitz, and many men around him died. He survived by choosing not to think that that was the end of the world for him. So we have a choice. We can, and that is exercising our free will. Well, a little take on this is that one of the other prisoners in the talk said, yes, we have the free will to think what we may, but I wished I'd have also realised at the same time that we have a free will not. In other words, a free won't. So that's what I say about we can have all sorts of thoughts, but we don't have to act on those thoughts because they are thoughts. They are given to us by this bubbling melting pot of thoughts that comes to us. And so that is the first stage, that we should not be blame ourselves for thoughts, or feel guilty about having particular thoughts, or get too hung up over having particular thoughts, because we can have any type of thought. They come to us. It is us, ourselves, that then put a take on a particular thought. It is just that a thought is there to inform us of the possibilities around the thought that we've been given. So, for example, if I was in a car, say drove to the seaside, and I drove up to the cliff edge, got out the car to look at the view. Say I was with my wife, and this has happened, that there's usually a fence near the edge that says, don't go too near the edge. I want to go near the edge because I want to get a better view, and it always excites me a little bit getting near the edge. But there is the foolhardiness, perhaps, of that type of thought. But the opposite type of thought could be, don't go anywhere near the edge. In fact, don't go anywhere near cliffs. In fact, stay indoors. So there you are being fearful, have a fearful thought about life. And that can keep you trapped. That can keep you away from others, can keep you away from experiencing life. So that's what I mean by the range of thoughts that any one of us can have around a particular situation. It is our choice to use that thought, because it is being given there basically for us to explore, for us to benefit from. That is why when I've talked about mind, consciousness and thought, our consciousness, our awareness tells us that, for example, we are near a cliff edge. When I was a kid, I'm talking about ages of, I'm talking about the late 40s, showing my age again. So I'm talking about when I was about 7 years old, early 50s. Then I was a very happy kid. I liked people, I smiled at people, people smiled back at me. So like attracts like, that's good. And then all of a sudden I started to compare myself with kids at school, and started to think that, because I was dyslexic and things like that, so I couldn't do the things that other kids could do, and that upset me. and that reflected in the way I did things. I got confused. I was a bit of a klutz on things, and that happiness suddenly changed to unhappiness, worry, insecurity. What the heck would happen to me? And that's how any of us can get as adults. And when I say as adults, sometimes when I have a conversation, I'm thinking of a glass of wine with either of my daughters or my wife, but one daughter in particular, if things get too near the knuckle on politics, she will say, "Don't go there, Dad." And what she means is, look, what's going to happen is I disagree with you. I will get annoyed with what you're saying, or you'll get annoyed with what I'm saying, and we don't have to go there. And that is, I think that's a very useful saying, really, because we are all human and we don't have to follow a particular thought. It's like the free will and free will not. That is our choice. The thing about having a particular thought, and you've got to realise, and I'm sure you do, that all our thoughts are based on our beliefs, our upbringing, our experiences. In other words, we are all conditioned, so we all have particular beliefs and particular ways of thinking. But that often can narrow our focus. In other words, when we pursue a particular avenue of thought, there is always more to see. There is always more ideas come to us, or thoughts come to us around that particular thing that we focus on. Now, that can be very useful. So if we are writing or we are talking to someone about a particular thing, or say exploring a hobby, we can always learn more about that particular thing and get better at that particular thing. And if it's a good thing, we like a nice walk. Each time we go on that walk, we can see more and more about the nature around us, because our focus attunes itself to that. But when we go the other way, when we start to focus on the darker side of things, when we focus on upsetments, when we focus on hatreds, envies, coming from not having enough, then those type of thoughts will beget more of those type of thoughts, because we've narrowed ourselves down to those type of things. And that can, a term for that is overthinking. And when we get to overthinking, what would be a normal situation of, oh crikey, what shall I do about this particular situation, can go from that type of thinking, which could be helpful, to a type of thinking where we've got our head in our hands, because we're saying, oh my God, what on earth can we do? You know, the world is coming to an end. So that's not going to achieve a lot, because basically our mind has just become a narrow focus on that particular bad thing. We're overthinking that particular bad thing, and nothing clear in the term of thoughts, the flow of thoughts, is going to happen because we're stuck. And so it's like a lot of people go through psychoanalysis, when in actual fact, in other words, concentrating on particular things that have upset them, that they are stuck on, when in, like a stick going down a stream, that stick gets stuck, it just needs a nudge to move along. In other words, the understanding of how the car works, you need to put petrol in it, understanding that you look at the temperature gauge on the car to see if it's overheating, like the understanding that our thoughts are just thoughts. We can choose to go whichever way we want to. We don't have to go there. We have free will, and as I've said, free will not. Then we know by this understanding that a full mind, a cluttered mind, a totally occupied mind blocks the flow of new thought. Now that takes me to the main point of this talk, is that we need to ask the question, who are we? In other words, we have a human side and we have, in other words, our form, as it were, but we have a formless side which comes before thinking. In other words, the fact that we can think, that we can be aware of our thoughts, and that there is the energy of life flowing through us, which Sydney Banks called mind. And so this mind, the intelligent energy of life, flows through us. It is what helps the grass grow. It is what helps all our cells in our body know what to do at any moment in time. It informs life. It is intelligent. And as I've said before, it wants us to thrive because it is life. And that's where we know it has our back, in that sense of it wants us to get on. It wants us to develop. So when this energy, this intelligent energy is flowing through us, then we always know instinctively, gut feelingly, I call it just a tapping on the shoulder, a sense of what to do. It is a little bit, I've had other people explain this as the metal detector of the mind. In other words, it's like looking for the gold, and when you're listening to mind, listening for what can come through, then that metal detector will bleep and tell you where the goal is. The trouble is that when the mind is busy and we're listening to all the noise up in our head, that becomes a very difficult thing to do, to listen to our wisdom. So what I have said in this talk is that anxiety and depression are thought-generated things that they, if focused on, are very solid and very real. That can become our reality. It doesn't have to be our reality, because our reality comes from thought, and our thoughts can change. And we have the ability to have our take on particular thoughts. But when we do have a clear mind, a quiet mind, a mind that is relaxed, and we get that through chilling, we get that through going for walks in nature, we get that just by relaxing, maybe just having my tea's getting cold, having a cup of tea, and it settles. And when it settles, it allows the flow of thought to come through. Now that thought always has the potential for something better, something different. Just recently, as you all know, we've been in lockdown. We're now out of lockdown. I've had a haircut and I've had a pint of beer and I feel great and I'm pleased about things. Well, for example, I used to work in the aircraft industry in factories. And those factories, as I've said, produce aircraft. But because of the lockdown and people in the hospitals needed ventilators, that factory was able to swap from making aeroplanes to making ventilators, aerospace equipment. So it was able to swap to making ventilators and helpful things like that for the hospitals. And our mind, our ability to think, is like that, is that we don't have to manufacture one particular thing, like anxiety or depression. It can turn its creativeness to more useful things, to enjoying life, to looking out for life, for looking at the possibilities, for ease, for enjoyment, for learning, for loving. Because when you're talking about mind, the intelligence, energy behind life, that is just love. And when we go quiet to our take on things, which can often, as I said, from being a little kid, can turn to being a little bit sour, because the way in which life, because we're foam, hits us, But prior to form, the formless energy of thought is always there to give us this potential to look at what that is. And what that is love. And when we go quiet to our humanness, sometimes in the form of our ego, and step back from that, then what comes through is that love in terms of all sorts of things, like being friendly, like being generous, like enjoying what we are doing, just being enthusiastic, being inspired by things, being in spirit, which always, although we think we are solid and form and that's all there is, no, 99.99% of us is what gives us all that, the energy that runs through us, which is spirit, which is, Sid Banks would call this mind, which combined with our ability to think and our ability to witness those thoughts through our consciousness and have our take on things, and our take can be good, bad or indifferent. That's knowing how the car drives. We can live a much more enjoyable life, a life freer and not tied to the solidness of anxiety and depression, because it can be evaporated. And that is our possibilities to be able to do that. So thank you very much for listening and looking, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much.